Man, this one hits different. The streets of Chicago are heavy right now, mourning another real one gone too soon. And while the city grieves, Lil Durk is sitting in federal custody, getting some of the worst news of his life. THF Bayzoo, one of his most loyal soldiers, one of OTF's day one hitters, was gunned down in broad daylight on the west side of Chicago. According to reports spreading across social media, Zoo was out at a junkyard, just trying to grab some car parts, minding his own business, when a car pulled up. Out of nowhere, two goofs hopped out and opened fire, spraying bullets at Zoo and two other people who were with him.
Are in the hospital after a shooting. This happened around 3 this afternoon near 31st and St. Louis.
Witnesses say Bayzoo was hit 3 times, including a brutal shot to the chest from a 7.62 Draco round, a weapon built to end lives fast. He was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, bleeding out from massive wounds to his torso. Doctors fought to save him, but the damage was too deep. And according to tribute posts flooding Instagram from his closest homies, Duty Low, CEO, Big 30, and Pootie, Zoo didn't make it. This ain't just another Chicago drill tragedy. This one cuts deep. Because Bayzoo wasn't just another name in the streets, he was family. One of the real ones who stood beside Durk from day one, through every war, every loss, every headline. This was a man who lived and died by loyalty, and now his stories ended the same way it began. In the heart of the city that raised him. This story ain't just about another loss in the streets. It's about loyalty, brotherhood, and how everything Lil Durk built is starting to crumble while he's locked up, fighting for his freedom. The city's watching his empire shake, and it all starts with the man everyone knew as THF Bay Zoo. Before we dive into how Durk reacted to this devastating news, we gotta break down who Bayzoo really was. Because this loss doesn't just sting. It's ripping through both the THF and OTF families. THF Bayzoo, real name, Bayzoo, wasn't just another soldier on the block. He was the leader of THF 46, not a side player, not a background member, the actual man running operations. He sat at the helm of one of the most dangerous and respected street movements on the south side of Chicago. THF 46 stands for Trigger Happy Family, and their turf runs through the 46th and Drexel area in North Kenwood. But what made them stand out was their structure. They weren't your average street set. They were a hybrid organization, blending members of the Black Disciples and Mickey Cobras under one unified banner. And at the center of it all, Bayzoo was calling the shots. But here's what made Zoo different from most of the dudes running the streets. He wasn't out here for clout or pretending for the cameras. He had a violent past, no denying that, but he was actively trying to move past it. Still, the streets don't forget, and Zoo's name had weight long before the fame ever hit. He was connected to multiple bodies back in the day, real street business. At one point, he even caught a murder charge and managed to beat the case in court. This wasn't a man playing gangster. Zoo was the real deal. Everyone in Chicago knew it. He was respected by some, feared by others, and never pretended to be something he wasn't. That authenticity made him stand out, even in a city full of hard hitters. He wasn't chasing attention. He was living his truth, for better or worse. But with that reputation came war. THF has been locked in ongoing battles with some of the city's most infamous sets: 051 Young Money, STL EBT, Jarrow City, 757, and Brick Squad. The tension between these crews runs deep. Years of bloodshed, betrayals, and payback. And through all that chaos, Zoo was always front line, standing firm with his people. That's what made his death hit so hard, not just for Durk, but for everyone tied to the movement. Because when you lose a soldier like Zoo, you don't just lose muscle, you lose history, leadership, and a piece of the city's pulse. It wasn't all war and enemies, though. THF 46 also built serious alliances across the city. They were locked in tight with O-Block, 600, and most importantly, OTF. That's where Bayzoo's connection with Lil Durk became unshakable. These weren't surface-level rap ties or Instagram shoutouts. This was real street brotherhood, forged in the trenches, born from years of surviving together when nobody believed they'd make it out alive. But here's where Bayzoo's story takes a powerful and unexpected turn. In 2018, after getting out of jail, Zoo started making moves that shocked even his closest homies. According to an interview he did with No Jumper, he and King Von both converted to Islam that same year. They took their shahada together and committed to practicing their faith seriously, not for image, but for inner peace. For someone who had lived knee-deep in chaos for so long, that decision meant everything. It was a spiritual rebirth, a way to break free from the destructive cycle of violence that had defined so much of his past. Zoo wasn't trying to act holy or fake change. He was really doing the work. He still repped THF with pride. He never turned his back on his people, but something inside him had shifted. You could see it in how he spoke, how he carried himself. He was still about respect and loyalty, but now he was guided by faith, discipline, and a sense of redemption. Bayzoo was evolving, slowly but surely turning his pain into purpose. And that's exactly what makes his death so heartbreaking. He wasn't out here wilding anymore. He was trying to walk a righteous path. He was finding peace in prayer, focus in family, and meaning in second chances. Yet somehow, even while trying to escape it, the streets still found him. While Zoo's body was being mourned, Lil Durk was living through his own nightmare, one that made the loss even harder to bear. To understand why Bayzoo's death is breaking Durk emotionally, you gotta look at what the man's dealing with right now. Because Lil Durk is going through the darkest period of his entire life. On October 24th, 2024, federal agents arrested Durk at a Miami airport right before he boarded a private jet headed to Italy. The feds weren't playing. They hit him with conspiracy to commit murder-for-hire charges, accusing him of orchestrating a hit on Quando Rondo, the same hit that allegedly killed Rondo's cousin Lul Pab back in 2022. We're talking federal time, the kind that doesn't just end careers but ends lives. If convicted, he's facing potential life in prison. Think about that. Lil Durk, the man who was dominating the charts, collaborating with Drake, J. Cole, and carrying Chicago on his back, now sitting in a cell, staring at a future that might never see daylight again. The same man who helped build an empire out of pain and loyalty is now watching everything crumble from behind bars, and losing Bayzoo, one of the few people who'd been solid since day one, is the kind of pain you can't recover from. It wasn't just Lil Durk who got hit that day. The feds moved in on the entire OTF circle. Alongside Durk, 5 other members were arrested the same morning in a coordinated sweep that left the streets buzzing and the industry in shock. The federal indictments weren't light either. They're all facing potential decades behind bars. According to reports, the FBI built their case like a puzzle piece by piece, using banking records, flight manifests, surveillance footage, and even witness statements. They claim Durk financed everything: the flights, the hotel rooms, and even the rental cars used in the alleged operation. If that narrative holds up in court, it could mean the end of OTF as we know it, an empire torn down from the inside out. But the destruction doesn't stop there. While Durk sits confined in that cold federal cell, fighting to hold on to what little freedom he's got left, his entire empire is collapsing in real time. Outside those prison walls, the feds froze his accounts, seized his assets, and put his label deals in complete legal limbo. The money that once fueled OTF's entire operation, studio sessions, tours, payroll, everything, has been cut off completely. The empire Durk spent over a decade building from the dirt is now disintegrating piece by piece with every passing day. And now, on top of all that pressure, comes the final blow. Word made its way back to Durk behind bars that Bayzoo, one of his closest homies, one of his most loyal day ones, had just been killed in cold blood on the same streets they grew up surviving together. Imagine that reality, fam. You're already trapped in the worst situation of your life, facing federal conspiracy charges that could lock you away forever. And then you hear that one of your brothers, someone who helped you build everything, is gone. Just like that. That kind of pain changes a man from the inside out. It's not something you recover from, it's something that lives in you. That's the kind of heartbreak that forces you to question everything, every choice, every risk, every moment that led up to this one. And when the news of Bayzoo's death broke, the internet exploded. But this wasn't just random fans posting crying emojis or old pictures. It was his real people speaking out. The ones who'd shared the same blocks, the same battles, and the same loyalty codes. Duty Low, one of Bayzoo's best friends and a fellow OTF soldier, posted a powerful tribute on Instagram that went viral within minutes. For those who didn't know, Duty Low and Zoo weren't just crew. They were brothers in every sense of the word. Their bond went back decades. Before the fame, before the music, Before OTF was even a brand, they came up together, survived the same wars, and built a trust that most people never experience in a lifetime. Duty Low's post wasn't about clout, it was about grief. You could feel the heartbreak in every word. He spoke like someone who had just lost a part of himself. It wasn't about rap beefs or gang politics. It was raw emotion, the kind of pain only the trenches understand. As the tributes continued to pour in, from Big 30, Pooh Shiesty, and countless others, it became clear this wasn't just another loss in Chicago's cycle of violence. This was personal. This was family. Because to them, THF Bayzoo wasn't just a name, he was loyalty personified. And his death didn't just hit Durk, it hit the entire movement at its core. When Bayzoo died, Duty Low was one of the first to break the silence. And when he spoke, the world felt it. His post didn't read like some typical social media tribute or industry clout chase. Nah, this was real grief, the kind that seeps through your words even when you try to stay strong. You could feel the pain in every line, the heartbreak of a man who had just lost his brother, not just his homie. Duty Low's message hit harder than most because everyone knew how close he and Bayzoo were. They had history, decades of it. They'd survived together, laughed together, and built OTF from the ground up. So when Duty posted that tribute, it didn't just speak for him, it spoke for the entire OTF and THF family. Then came another voice, CEO Big 30 from Memphis, a respected name in his own right. When Big 30 stepped in and showed his respect, it made one thing clear. Bayzoo's influence stretched far beyond Chicago. His name carried weight across states, across cities, across the entire southern rap scene. Big 30's post was short, but it hit like a bullet. No long captions, no hashtags, just pure acknowledgement and respect for a man who stood on principle. Zoo was the type of dude real ones recognized instantly. He carried himself with honor in a world where that word doesn't mean much anymore. Even Pooh Shiesty, who's currently dealing with his own serious legal battles and serving time in a halfway house, made sure to speak up and honor Bayzoo. The fact that he took that moment, knowing everything he's got going on, to pay his respects says everything about Zoo's reputation. When rappers from different cities, different sets, and different situations all come together to mourn the same man, that's not ordinary. That's legacy. It proves how deep Bayzoo's impact really ran through the culture. He wasn't just known, he was respected everywhere. But while the whole hip-hop community was grieving, one man was forced to sit in silence. And that man was Lil Durk. For Durk, this loss isn't just painful, it's torture. Because right now, he's completely powerless. He can't attend the funeral. He can't stand beside Duty Low to share that pain. He can't speak to the fans directly or post a heartfelt tribute on Instagram. He can't even drop a bag to help take care of Zoo's people or make a move to get justice for his brother. Durk's trapped inside a federal cell, isolated, stripped of control, while his best friend's life is being celebrated, mourned, and remembered without him. And for someone who built an empire based on loyalty and brotherhood, that kind of helplessness cuts deep. It's the kind of pain that doesn't fade. It lingers, eating at you day after day, knowing that when your people needed you most, you couldn't be there. That's what makes this loss so haunting. It's not just that THF Bayzoo is gone, it's that the man who loved him like family has to grieve alone, behind bars, unable to say goodbye. It's a uniquely cruel kind of torture, fam. Being locked in a cell while your people are dying outside, knowing you can't do a thing to protect them. That's the psychological hell Lil Durk is trapped in right now. Imagine the pain of watching your world fall apart in real time, powerless to move, to call, to act. That's not just confinement. That's punishment beyond walls. But the question that keeps haunting everyone is why Bayzoo was even back in Chicago in the first place. Because according to multiple street sources, Zoo didn't just randomly show up in the city. He was there, out of survival. His return to the trenches wasn't about clout, revenge, or ego. It was about economics. See, when Lil Durk was free, he wasn't just making money, he was feeding an army. That's what OTF stood for, only the family. Durk made sure his people were good, no matter what. He was spreading his blessings, covering rent, buying cars, paying legal fees, making sure the people who'd stood beside him from day one never had to go back to the block. And Bayzoo, being one of Durk's most loyal day ones, was definitely part of that circle. He didn't need to move weight, didn't need to take risks because Durk's success protected him. It gave him the space to breathe, to step away from the danger that had defined his earlier years. For the first time, he had stability, a safety net that came from brotherhood, not the streets. But when the feds came for Durk, everything changed overnight. The moment those federal charges hit, the system collapsed. The money stopped flowing, and the machine that had been keeping so many people fed went silent. Federal agents froze Durk's accounts, seized assets, and blocked label access. Suddenly, the man who had been everyone's lifeline couldn't even send $1 out. It was like someone flipped a switch, and OTF's entire financial structure shut down. For Zoo, that change hit especially hard. He wasn't a rapper or influencer. He was a soldier. His life had always been rooted in movement, loyalty, and hustle. So when the flow stopped and the people he looked out for started struggling, he felt obligated to move again. According to people close to the situation, that's when Bayzoo made the calculated decision to go back to Chicago and re-enter street operations. Not because he wanted to, but because he had to. It was economic survival. Zoo wasn't chasing chaos. He was trying to fill the gap left by Durk's arrest. He wanted to keep things stable, to make sure OTF's name still meant something while its leader was behind bars. But in the process, he walked back into the same danger he'd once escaped. The same streets that made him were waiting for him, and this time, they weren't giving second chances. That's the tragedy of it all. Bayzoo wasn't a man looking for trouble. He was a man trying to hold things together when everything around him was falling apart. And in the end, that loyalty, that sense of duty, put him right back in the crosshairs. Word on the streets is that Bayzoo had started moving weed again, not for status, not to flex, but just to survive. He was trying to pay bills, keep food on the table, and make it through each day. Some people online have been quick to ask, why didn't he just get a normal job? But fam, that's easier said than done when you come from Zoo's world. When you're a known figure from THF, when your name rings bells across Chicago's South Side, when you've got a record and reputation tied to decades of street life, traditional employment ain't exactly an option. No company's rushing to hire someone with a background like his, especially when your face is known in both the streets and the system. For guys like Zoo, the corporate world never opens its doors, it locks them tighter. So he did what many in his position have done. He went back to what he knew. Moving small amounts of product, keeping his circle tight, generating just enough money through the street economy to survive. But that decision came with a deadly risk. Because when you leave the streets and try to come back later, you're way more vulnerable than before. See? Your enemies never forget. They remember your face, your moves, your old affiliations, and the minute they sense your guards down, you become a target. They know you're not moving with the same power or protection you once had, especially if your heavyweight allies, like Durk, are no longer active on the outside. And that's exactly what made Bayzoo an easy mark. That junkyard visit wasn't supposed to be dangerous. According to reports, Zoo was there to pick up car parts, maybe for personal use, maybe for business. He wasn't out wilding or doing reckless moves. He brought 2 other people with him, likely for security purposes, which shows he still had awareness of how dangerous things were. But in Chicago, sometimes caution isn't enough. Because someone knew his location. Someone had eyes on him, watching, waiting, tracking his every move. The setup wasn't random, it was calculated. Whoever pulled that trigger didn't stumble across him by accident. They had intel. They knew exactly where to find him and when. Now, the city's buzzing with questions. Everyone wants to know, why did this happen? Who set him up? What really went down? The first major theory floating through the streets is that this was a drug transaction gone wrong. If Zoo had gone back to moving product, maybe that junkyard meetup wasn't just about car parts. It could have been business. A quick meeting to move something or settle something. But if that's true, it's possible the other side came with hidden intentions from the jump. Maybe they didn't come to negotiate, they came to eliminate. Chicago's underground runs deep with betrayals, and the line between a deal and a setup is razor thin. When word spreads that you're moving again, even lightly, the vultures start circling, especially if they think you're vulnerable, especially if they know the man protecting you, Lil Durk, can't reach you anymore. What happened at that junkyard wasn't just another shooting, it was a calculated ambush. A hit carried out with timing, knowledge, and precision. Zoo was back in motion, trying to rebuild. But in the process, he stepped right into the crosshairs of a city that never forgets its grudges. Maybe the shooter's goal wasn't business at all. Maybe they planned to rob him. Maybe there was a money dispute that spiraled out of control. After all, drug deals flipping violent is one of the most common causes of death in Chicago. On the surface, that theory makes sense. It fits the city's rhythm of betrayal and fast cash gone wrong. But here's what doesn't add up. If this was just about robbing him, why pull up with a Draco, a weapon that fires 7.62 rounds meant to tear through steel, not just scare someone off? That's not your average robbery heat. That's military-grade destruction. You don't bring that kind of firepower to snatch a bag. You bring it when you want to end somebody. That's what makes this situation feel different. The brutality, the precision, the timing, it all screams personal. Whoever did this wasn't chasing money. They were chasing vengeance. And that's where the second theory comes in, the one that's gaining serious traction in Chicago's drill circles right now. According to whispers on the ground, this was retaliation. A payback hit for the murder of DMG Lil Scum. Now, for anyone unfamiliar, Lil Scum was a rising rapper out of Chicago, well-connected, respected in his area, and quickly gaining buzz across the Midwest. But just last month, he was killed in a violent shooting that shook the city's underground. His death didn't just spark grief, it sparked accusations. Immediately after his passing, people from Scum's circle started naming names. Social media lit up with cryptic posts, indirect disses, and a flood of street rumors. Multiple voices started pointing fingers directly at THF members. The tension was already building. Instagram stories, TikTok lives, and even snippets of new music were dropping subliminal threats. And when enough people start saying your name in connection to a body in Chicago, that becomes your reality, whether it's true or not. I can't confirm whether THF 46 had anything to do with Lil Scum's death, but perception is everything in the streets. And in Chicago's gang culture, perception might as well be proof. Once your name's attached to violence, it's a target on your back. So the most widely accepted theory right now goes like this. Lil Scum's people had been plotting on THF since September. They weren't emotional, they were strategic. They sat back, watched movements, tracked patterns, and waited for the right opportunity to strike. And when they found out that Bayzoo was back in Chicago, when they realized he was moving without OTF's full protection, they decided it was time. They saw a gap. They saw vulnerability. And they executed. That's what makes this theory so chilling. It explains the extreme level of violence and the firepower used. That wasn't a random hit. That was revenge. A payback hit designed not just to kill, but to send a message. Because in Chicago's underworld, death isn't just about who pulled the trigger. It's about who gets the last word. And in this case, every sign points to a move that was personal, precise, and planned down to the second. Bayzoo's death wasn't just another statistic, it was a statement. A brutal reminder that in the streets of Chicago, history doesn't fade, and every act of violence echoes back eventually. This wasn't some random street crime. This was a straight-up execution. Every move, every bullet, every second of that ambush felt calculated, like a message being delivered loud and clear to THF. This wasn't chaos. It was surgical precision. The shooters weren't trying to scare. They were trying to make a statement. That's why they rolled up with a Draco. That's why they hit him 3 times. Each shot meant to guarantee the mission was finished. This wasn't a drive-by. It was a hit. And when you look at the timeline, it lines up too perfectly to ignore. It's been just about a month since DMG Lil Scum was killed, and the tension in the city has been boiling ever since. Everyone's been watching, waiting, expecting retaliation, and now it looks like it finally came. If this theory holds weight, then Bayzoo didn't die because of something he did personally. He died because of what he represented. He was THF royalty, a respected name, a symbol of strength. And in Chicago's street politics, sometimes that's all it takes to make you a target. His name alone carried power, and killing him wasn't just about one man. It was about sending shockwaves through an entire organization. A cold reminder that no matter how high you climb, the streets never stop keeping score. That's the cruel reality of Chicago's underworld. Sometimes you die for situations you weren't even part of. You become a casualty in wars you didn't start, a sacrifice in a game that doesn't care who's innocent. That's exactly the kind of tragedy that's hitting Lil Durk the hardest right now. Because while Zoo's body is being laid to rest, Durk is sitting in a federal holding cell, forced to process the death of one of his closest brothers from behind cold concrete walls. Let's talk about what that's doing to him mentally. Because the pain he's carrying right now, it's heavy. First, there's the guilt. That overwhelming, gnawing kind that doesn't let up. Even though Durk didn't pull the trigger, even though he was already locked up when it happened, he's blaming himself. Why? Because in his mind, everything traces back to his arrest. If he hadn't been taken down by the feds, if OTF's money was still flowing, if his team still had resources, then Zoo wouldn't have needed to step back into the streets. He wouldn't have been moving product. He wouldn't have been at that junkyard. He wouldn't have been vulnerable. So now, sitting alone in that cell, Durk is replaying every decision, every move, every moment, trying to figure out how things spiraled this far. That kind of guilt doesn't just hurt. It crushes you. It eats at your mind day after day, especially when you know you'll never get the chance to make things right. And then there's the isolation. That's the part nobody sees. He can't attend the funeral. He can't hug Duty Low or comfort Zoo's family. He can't even post a message to honor his friend publicly. All he's got are 4 walls, a metal bed, and too many thoughts. He's cut off from everyone and everything he's ever cared about. For a man who built his entire empire around family and loyalty, that kind of separation feels like death itself. Because Durk's always been the leader, the one who protects, provides, and keeps the circle tight. Now, he's powerless. He can't fix it, can't fight it, can't even speak on it. The same loyalty that once built his empire is now his biggest burden. And as the streets of Chicago keep bleeding, and names like Bayzoo turn into hashtags and murals, Durk's left alone in silence, haunted by the question that never stops echoing in his mind. If I was free, would my brother still be alive? All Lil Durk can do right now is sit in that cold, silent cell, staring at the same concrete walls, replaying memories that now feel like ghosts. He's remembering the laughs, the late-night studio sessions, the road trips, the dreams they spoke into existence. Every plan, every promise, every goal they made together. It's all gone. And that realization hits him harder than any sentence ever could. But that's only part of the pain. The third layer is what's truly devastating. The slow, crushing awareness of everything he's lost. It's not just Bayzoo. It's King Von, gone since 2020. It's the countless homies who've been murdered, locked up, or faded away. It's his freedom, his empire, his entire world, everything he built from the mud piece by piece now slipping through his fingers. And on top of that heartbreak, there's another dagger twisting deep. Betrayal. Because while Durk's sitting in a cell fighting for his life, he's watching the same people who once screamed OTF for life suddenly go quiet. That's the ugly side of this industry that nobody likes to talk about. When you're up, when you're winning, everybody claims they're loyal. But the second the spotlight fades and the feds get involved, most people vanish like smoke. The same rappers who used to flood social media with pictures next to Durk, repping OTF like it was a badge of honor. The same ones who rode his wave, took his cosigns, got their careers boosted from his influence. Now, they're silent. You don't see their posts. You don't hear their support. You don't even see a Free Durk hashtag. Because deep down, they're scared. Scared of guilt by association. They don't want federal agents digging through their texts, their flights, their DMs. So they're pretending they don't know him, acting like all those years of loyalty and brotherhood never happened. That's the part that breaks a man's spirit. Because while the fake ones fade into the background, the real ones, the ones who actually loved him like family, like Bayzoo, they're dying in these same streets. The ones who stood on loyalty, they're the ones paying the ultimate price. And that's the moment when the truth hits. Loyalty cuts both ways. It can build an empire, but it can also destroy you. Now let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture, because this story, this tragedy, it's not just about one death. It's not just about Lil Durk or THF or OTF. What's unfolding right now is a reflection of something way deeper, a cycle that's been devouring Chicago for decades. This is about the never-ending loop of violence, loyalty, and consequence. The code that raises young men to believe that loyalty is everything, even when that loyalty ends up costing them their lives. Durk built his entire legacy on that word, loyalty. It was the heart of his movement, the glue that held his empire together. Only the family wasn't just a label. It was a way of life. But the harsh truth, that kind of loyalty comes with a price. Because when your empire is built on real love and street bonds, every loss hits like a bullet. And when those bullets start flying, they don't just take lives, they take pieces of your soul. Durk's sitting behind those bars, realizing that maybe this whole cycle doesn't end with success or revenge. It just repeats. Different faces, same pain. Different names, same story. And now, as he stares at those cold prison walls, the empire he built in the name of brotherhood is crumbling, one tragedy at a time. And the question that lingers over it all is the one Chicago keeps asking. How many more kings gotta fall before the cycle finally breaks? OTF was never supposed to just be a record label. It was meant to be a family, a brotherhood built on loyalty, survival, and shared struggle. When Lil Durk was free, when he was winning commercially and controlling serious money, he could actually protect his people. He was able to pull them out of the trenches, keep them off the corners, and give them opportunities that didn't come with a gun or a risk attached. But the second he got arrested, the moment that cash flow stopped and those accounts got frozen, everything changed instantly. The structure that kept the family stable just collapsed overnight. And in Chicago, when the money dries up and the system fails you, everybody reverts to survival mode. And in Chicago, survival mode means one thing: the streets. It means going right back to what you know. It means taking chances you swore you'd never take again. It means putting yourself in the same danger you once escaped. And once you step back into that world, every old enemy who still remembers your name is suddenly watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That's what happened to THF Bayzoo. Zoo didn't die chasing fame or flexing for clout. He died trying to survive. When OTF's money completely dried up, he was cornered by reality. Bills piling up, mouths to feed, and no legal income in sight. This was a man who had already turned his life around. He had converted to Islam, found peace in faith, and was genuinely trying to transform himself. But when the system gives you no real way out, the streets start whispering again. And sometimes you feel like you've got no choice but to listen. That's the trap, fam. The one nobody ever truly escapes. The streets never let you go. Even if you make it out, even if you taste success, the second that safety net disappears, you end up right back where you started. Only now, you're more visible, more envied, and more of a target than ever before. And for Lil Durk, this situation is his worst nightmare come to life. He's sitting in federal custody, fighting for his freedom, knowing that every day he's locked away, the same streets he tried to save his brothers from are claiming them one by one. He spent his whole career trying to help his circle escape the cycle of violence, and now he's forced to watch it swallow them all over again. He's fighting for his life in court, facing the real possibility of never walking free again. And while he's behind bars, his day one brothers, the same ones he built OTF with, are dying in the very same streets he fought so hard to rise above. That's not just pain, that's torment. So let's keep it 100 about this thing we call loyalty in the streets. Bayzoo's loyalty to Lil Durk and OTF was unshakable. When the feds hit Durk with those murder-for-hire charges and everybody else started to distance themselves, Bayzoo stood firm. He didn't hide his loyalty or move quiet. He screamed it out loud. He posted "Free Durk" when it wasn't safe to. He repped OTF to his last breath. And what did that loyalty get him? It got him killed in a junkyard. Lil Durk couldn't protect Bayzoo because he was locked up. The OTF money that could have kept Zoo away from the streets was gone. The empire that once lifted everyone up had crumbled overnight. So you have to ask yourself, what's all that loyalty worth if the system can dismantle it in a single day? Because out here, loyalty isn't a shield, it's a gamble. And sometimes, even when you play it right, the streets still collect their debt. Bayzoo's loyalty to Lil Durk and OTF was unquestionable. The kind that doesn't bend, doesn't break, and doesn't fade no matter how bad things get. When Durk got arrested on those murder-for-hire charges and the industry started going quiet, when people who once stood beside him began distancing themselves to save their own names, Bayzoo never flinched. He stood firm when it wasn't safe to. He posted "Free Durk" while others deleted their old pictures. He repped OTF to his very last breath, still holding that banner high even when it made him a target. That kind of loyalty, real loyalty, is rare. But in the end, it came with the heaviest price, because that same loyalty got him killed in a junkyard. Lil Durk couldn't protect him, not because he didn't care, but because he was locked up. The OTF money that once kept Bayzoo safe, that could have helped him move out of Chicago, was frozen. The empire that once represented strength, unity, and family had crumbled overnight. And that's what cuts the deepest. All that loyalty, all that love, all that sacrifice, gone in a single day. So what was it all for? What's loyalty worth if the system, a system that was never built for them to win, can just dismantle it in an instant? The streets love to preach that loyalty is everything. They tell you, real, recognize real. But what they don't say is that loyalty might mean your mother's planning your funeral before you even hit 35. They don't tell you that loyalty in the wrong world can turn into a death sentence. For Lil Durk, this loss hits like a wrecking ball. Losing THF Bay Zoo isn't just another tragedy. It's another piece of his soul ripped away. He's already buried too many of his day ones. King Von, his best friend, gone in 2020. His blood brother, murdered in 2021. Countless others, friends, cousins, soldiers, taken one by one. And now, as he sits in that federal cell, he's forced to watch his freedom slipping away, his empire in ruins, and the brothers he built everything with dying in the same streets he spent his life trying to escape. That's a pain you can't explain. That's not just loss. It's punishment, with no end. And the question everyone's asking now, quietly, behind closed doors, is whether THF will retaliate. Whether Zoo's death will ignite another round of bloodshed, another war between neighborhoods that never truly made peace. Because in Chicago, history repeats itself like a curse. Every time someone dies, the next move feels inevitable. Revenge, retaliation, more pain, more loss. The cycle keeps spinning, and the city keeps bleeding. And that's the heartbreaking part. Because deep down, everyone already knows the answer. Yes, someone will retaliate. Someone will pick up that gun, driven by loyalty, grief, and anger. And another mother will cry. Another mural will go up. Another brother will be gone before he even has a chance to grow old. So the real question isn't if the violence continues, it's when will it stop? When will someone decide that loyalty to the streets isn't worth dying for? When will the meaning of family stop being tied to funerals? Until that day comes, stories like THF Bayzoo's will keep playing on repeat. Loyalty, love, loss, and blood. And in the end, all that'll remain are names etched in murals, hashtags fading online, and a city still waiting for peace. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like. See you on the next one.